Hello, BookTube. I'm Jonathan, and today we're going to be diving into some big books, talking about some big stories. So I thought, who better than John from Talking Story to talk about these books with? John, I love your shelf. I see some big books on it behind you. Am I correct in assuming you're not afraid of a big book?
I love a doorstop book, man. I'm not afraid.
Yes.
There are some not up there because I pulled them down ready to go.
Mm.
Yes.
So the Talking Story fans out there can do some sleuthing. Same here.
They might be able to recognize. I went off the beaten track for my last pick. It's the chunkiest. That's all I'm going to say.
Ooh, clues. There's a mystery within the video already. I like it. So I am a little bit afraid of the big book, and that's because I predominantly read sci-fi. A lot of classic sci-fi. It's ideas driven, and they're tight little 200, 300 page books. A little light on the character development. That's okay. We love sci-fi books that focus on the ideas. But every now and again, at least once a month, I try to read a big one. And so that's what we're going to be diving into today. Big books only, sci-fi and fantasy. That's what we're focusing on. John, as the guest, introduce to us, please, your first big chunky book for today.
Oh, I'm going to go first. Okay. All right. All right. Okay. Okay. I'm going to hit you with a question right away, Jonathan.
I like it.
Have you ever seen Amadeus, the movie Amadeus?
I have not. I believe
Oh,
I believe my high school put it on after I left. Maybe as an alumni, I should have gone to see
one of
it.
my favorite movies of all time. The court composer is confronted with this young rock star, Amadeus Mozart, and he just can't understand, why have you been touched by the divine? How can you be so unbelievably talented? The jealousy washes over him. It's
I
just this
love it.
amazing story. So my first choice, I went with something that mirrors this story. I'm going with Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell by
Nice.
Susanna Clarke. This is a chunky boy right here.
That qualifies.
The same kind of story, except not a court composer. We have a court magician in like early 1800s UK, and a young upstart magician shows up and starts to steal all of his thunder. They go back and forth. Who's gonna go furthest on the edge? Who's gonna pay the biggest price to be the most magical? And it's an amazing alternate history at the same time of that time period,
Okay.
all the way down to the amazing footnotes that Susanna Clarke includes that will sink you right into time and place and make you suspend your disbelief with this book. It is so amazingly lush. The prose is beautiful. She is a craftsperson. There is a reason why she doesn't put out book after book after book, because
Mm.
it is meticulously crafted and the language is gorgeous. If you haven't read this yet, do yourself a favor, work out for a week or two so you can lift this
Yeah.
big chunky boy and give it a read.
I love it. I love your passion for it. All right, I'm intrigued. Have you read Piranesi, if I'm
Yes.
pronouncing that correctly? It is that a segue that you would recommend trying to get into Susanna Clark, or do you say no? Pick up the chunker. Start here.
No, you
Don't
know
be
what?
afraid of the chunk.
I absolutely say pick up Piranesi, because
Okay.
Piranesi is that slim volume, and you're going to read it and go, "Oh my God, I'm so sunk into this mystery from page one." The language, of course, is beautiful as only she can do, and by
Mm,
the end, you get a little bit of turn of sci-fi at the end when you get the resolve
okay.
of everything. So it might be a little bit comfortable for you, and I mean, you'll read it in a sitting, two or three sittings, like it just flies by, and that'll let you know if the style is right for you.
That makes sense. That's a good pitch. I liked some of the aspects of this. Part of the story reminded me a little bit of the Prestige. Have you seen the Prestige film?
Yes, yes.
It's so good. That was kind of a little bit of a hook for me there. And the footnotes. Footnotes can be divisive. It seems like you were a fan of the footnotes.
You know what? They really helped me buy into it. Like, I absolutely love the footnotes. And when I say court magician, I mean like Merlin level. I'm talking the real deal, the real, not the prestige of a sleight of hand, but yeah, it's such an alternate history. If we'd had magic in the early 1800s in the UK, and all the upheaval that was going on for the British Empire at that time, if they could have relied on some magic to get them through those times. Um, so the footnotes just kind of actually really sink you in of the lore of the world and where the magic comes from, and what's going on. I absolutely adored it. I would absolutely say do not skip the footnotes. Read the
Okay,
footnotes.
you gotta
There are
read.
times when 3/4 of the page are footnotes in this book, and they're well worth the time.
Interesting. I'm trying to think of some books that I've read. I think the Three Body Problem, the first book in the Remembrance of Earth's Past trilogy, had some footnotes, and I think he did away with them in the sequels. I liked him. I didn't love him. I felt like they added some information, some context that was helpful, but it was my favorite aspect of the story. And then this is going a ways back in my reading history to David Foster Wallace's Infinite Jest. And
Mm.
there's footnotes, and then there's even what you call it? Not references. I'm forgetting the term, but there's notes in the back that you're supposed to read, and there's like 200 pages of them.
Oh my God.
I'll be
That's a
honest,
whole nother
John.
book.
Yeah, I tapped out. I was like, only if the note sounds interesting. I read maybe half the notes, and then so
Oh,
if
Three
you
Body Problem I have, but I have not read yet. But I absolutely
mm,
want to read that one.
well, I my short answer will be I recommend it. At risk of me derailing this video and it becoming a three body problem video, I
Next
recommend
time.
it. Awesome. Well, for my first recommendation, this is maybe some beginner chunk, a starter
Okay.
chunk. If you're looking to dip your toe in some chunky waters,
I like it.
one that I don't feel like not everyone necessarily mentions the length of when they bring it up, but it's around 600 pages, and that is we'll put it on this side.
Ooh.
Children of Time by Adrian Tchaikovsky. So, I mean, look at that. I think that counts.
Yeah.
I think
Oh,
that's
that
kind of
counts.
chunky.
That counts.
So, the quick premise for Children of Time is that in the future we have humans trying to colonize a planet, and something goes wrong. And instead of the humans ending up there, we have spiders that develop intelligence. And so humans, we follow two different storylines. Humans on a generation ship trying to find a place to land and survive and live on, and then the spider society that develops on this planet. And the first two-thirds of it I liked. I thought it kind of introduced some hard sci elements, really dived into both the science behind what was happening, as well as sort of the sociology, how sort of a culture develops over time. And then the last third, I thought Tchaikovsky tied everything together magnificently, both in terms of the story and thematically. This is a book that really spoke to me about certain things to do with generational connections and
Mm.
empathy, and it's a hard sci-fi book with heart. John, have you read it?
Rare. That's rare.
Yeah. Are you a Tchaikovsky fan? Have you read any of
Okay,
his
I
work?
have bought my first Adrian Tchaikovsky book. I
Nice.
think The City of Last Chances or something like that, because I know the second one is
Okay.
coming out later this year.
Nice. I
Um,
haven't read that one.
but I have not read any yet, but I really, absolutely, really want to. And that's a series I really want to read.
Yes, and the good thing about this, even though it is relatively long and even though it is part of the series, I think the first book holds up on its own. So don't feel if you're worried about committing to another series, you got too many series on your TBR, you can pick up book one, read it, and then decide whether you want to continue. I actually just stopped because I was so happy with the ending, but
Are you
maybe in the
really?
future I'll pick up
Like,
books
How,
two
how
and
many are
three.
in the whole series? Is it a trilogy or longer?
I think there's three.
Okay.
Tchaikovsky is when he says a trilogy is complete, I feel like there's a little wiggle room perhaps, but for now, for now, I think there's just three in the series.
Okay, he's definitely on my list. I definitely want to check that out. That is appealing to me. I like that pitch. I would write it down, Jonathan, but it's already up here. He's already somebody that was
Yeah,
well on my radar.
Tchaikovsky, spiders, it's a lock.
You can't lose, man. You can't
Yeah.
lose.
All right, John, what is your second big book recommendation?
Okay. Now this is a big one. And I would say not only one of my favorite Southern writers, my favorite all-time writers.
Okay,
I got to go. Swan Song by Robert McCammon.
nice.
This is, it doesn't look too big in this version, but the print is tiny in this version.
Yeah.
Normally,
Oh,
this book is, about like yay. Um, this is that now. It's that subgenre from sci-fi, post-apocalyptic, but this moves like an epic fantasy. You have the drawing
mm,
of found family. You have in this wasteland of a nuclear holocaust, you have the evil bubbling to the surface. You have those forces of light coming together. You have an ultimate climactic battle. You have characters that get under your skin to the point where you will thrill at every achievement, and then you will be crushed before the end of the book. That's all I will say.
Oh no.
It is absolutely heart wrenching. It is hopeful for the indomitable human spirit. It's everything that I think people love Stephen King's The Stand for,
Yeah.
but I kind of think McCammon did it better. I would
Ooh.
absolutely say if you have not read Robert McCammon, this is a great place to start. It is kind of like his magnum opus, but he does have other amazing things that I can recommend if you want. But this, for a chunker, I can't not put out Robert McCammon.
Interesting. That pitch alone was an emotional journey, let alone reading the actual book. I'm intrigued. I it is interesting that the edition that you have is not that thick, but it has the tiny writing. Is that something that you care about? Like, are you very specific about the types of editions, the print, the thickness, the hardback, all that
Yeah,
kind of stuff? Do you have what's your preference, John?
I I love special editions. This I got when I was living, you know, in Los Angeles when I was a much younger person.
Yeah.
I used to go to a bookstore called Dangerous Visions, not even open anymore. But Harlan Ellison was part owner of it, and they always
Oh,
had
interesting.
signings. They always had authors in all the time, and this was a special edition I got signed while I was there. It's by Dark Harvest. The publisher's not even around anymore. But
Mm.
yeah, normally this is a really thick, chunky book, but for some reason they went with such a tiny print on this. But I love hardcover editions, but I mean anything. I'll read anything, but I prefer hardcovers. But yeah, this is like one of my nice older collectible editions that I pulled off the shelf.
Interesting. All right, so you're gonna need maybe a glass of wine, maybe some tissues for that emotional journey, and maybe a magnifying glass to read
Uh,
that particular edition.
yeah, yeah. I all of those would be really good.
Yeah.
For sure, the tissue. By the end, you're gonna want some tissue. I think. Yeah, definitely.
Nice. Well, I like this pitch of yours, and I think you've helped me transition here because while I have not read Robert McCammon, although I've heard great things, I have read some Stephen King. There we go. Not The
Yeah.
Stand, but we were close. So I have been reading The Dark Tower recently, and this is book 4, Wizard and Glass. So I'll talk a little bit about this book, spoiler free, of course. The Dark Tower, there's 7 books in it, and 3 of them are chunkers. Book
Yeah.
1's pretty short, The Gunslinger. Book 2, The Drawing of the Three, and book 3, The Wastelands. Medium-sized books. But then you get to book 4, Wizard and Glass. This particular edition, my trade paperback, is 889. So there's a little bit of a step up. And I'll be honest, I was a little bit nervous to read it because I did like the first 3 books, especially books 2 and 3. But this one is so long, and I had heard, and this is not a spoiler, everybody kind of knows this about the book, so it's in the blurb, that a large chunk of it is a flashback.
Yeah.
A flashback is told in this. And I'm not always the biggest fan of flashbacks. Sometimes I'm like, if that was so interesting, that would have been the main storyline. You know, I'm reading this for the present storyline. What are you making me wait for? I was wrong, you guys. I absolutely loved the flashback storyline in this book, as well as what happens in the present timeline, because some things do happen there. But a big chunk is dedicated to some backstory for one of our main characters, and I was so invested in the characters. I think the first 3 books gave me a taste of what King was about, because I'm new to Stephen King as a predominantly sci-fi reader, and I had heard that he wrote great dialogue, great characters. He kind of had interesting, crazy ideas, and I kind of got the flavor of that in the first 3 books. This is the book that made me love the characters. I went from liking the Dark Tower to loving the Dark Tower. I'm all in. Don't let the size put you off. Don't let the flashbacks put you off. Commit. Just commit to the Dark Tower. Jump right in, is what I say.
I'm all in. One of my favorite series of all time.
Nice.
One of my favorite series of all time. And what I love about it, Jonathan, and let me see if you feel the same way, because you're far enough in now, 4 books in, right?
Yeah.
It is the most amazing love letter to storytelling,
Mm.
period, right? Like he takes bits of so many, it's so universal, hopping in so many different bits of stories from all different things. I love the Arthurian legend undercurrent of it all. I
Yes.
it I love the Sergio Leone Western feel of it all. It's like he just took everything that touched him as a kid when he was just soaking up story like a sponge and just threw it all out there, right? In this bizarre genre blender, bassomatic genre blender. I absolutely adore The Dark Tower.
Yeah, there's something in this series for everyone. If you like westerns, there's something for you. If you like horror, there's some things for you. If you like sci-fi, it's got robots, it's got some time travel. It counts. It's got
Alternate
sci-fi in there as
universe,
well.
alternate universes.
Hmm.
Hmm.
And then in terms of the references, I'm sure I'm only picking up on a fraction of them, but if you love a lot of classic literature, a lot of classic stories, the way that he kind of weaves either indirectly or actually directly into the story, just it's just a tapestry, a love letter, as you said, to storytelling itself. So I can't wait to read books 5, 6, and 7, two of which are chunkers. 5 and
Yeah.
7, I believe, are pretty thick boys as well.
And then you're primed for so much more of his stuff because he tied in so many of his books into the Dark Tower. Like
Yes.
there's just cross connections galore through so many of his other stuff.
Yes, this could probably be a video in of itself. I
Oh
know, I
yeah.
know some things maybe get spoiled. So if you do plan on reading a lot of King, maybe do a little bit of research ahead of time.
Yeah, get a reading list.
I'm kind of focused mostly on his sci-fi. Like I want to read The Stand and 11/22/63. So some of the things didn't personally bother me by jumping into the Dark Tower, but do a little bit of research online that should help you in terms of what to read first if you don't want anything spoiled.
If you pick up the stand, you will definitely
Mm,
recognize some things. That's all I'll say.
yeah, I like it. Awesome. Well, John, we're back to you. What chunker do you have for us next?
Okay, I'm gonna try not to throw my back out here because I went a little bit, like I say, I went off the beaten path. But when you think about chunk, here we go. Okay.
John said he's been working out all week for this moment. Oh my goodness, what have you got there?
I'm going with the full run of Sandman by Neil Gaiman.
Wow, that's an awesome collection.
You can't get chunkier. You can't. Love comics, had to throw something in there. This is one of my favorite epic fantasy series of all time, but also a comic. Neil Gaiman understands the mythology that have been running through our species for so long it's encoded in our DNA. He understands
Interesting.
what the Greeks and the Romans would do by building a pantheon and then putting on them our foibles and what we care about so we can see through them ourselves and better understand ourselves with some type of social mirror. It's what an achievement this is. If you've never read a comic, don't let it scare you. Pick it up. There's been stories told through sequential pictographs all the way back to cave walls. It's a legitimate form of storytelling. What he does transcends comics in this. You will absolutely love this journey. A little bit of the story, I'm talking about the family of the endless that were around before space and time, destiny, delirium, death, Dream, Morpheus, who is the main character here. Uh,
Oh, very cool.
what happens through the family machinations of them? You will meet characters like Shakespeare. You will meet characters like I'm telling you, go pick this up. You don't have to have the collector editions like this. They come in paperback. Don't let the cost scare you. Don't let the length scare you. It is a journey you absolutely should take.
Amazing. How many volumes are in that collection that you have?
4.
4. And then how many, I guess, what would be within a volume? How many comics is that equivalent to?
I think a lot of the times there's 10 to 12 comics in each of these.
All right, that makes sense. Very cool. Nice. So I am not much of a comic expert. I did read a few graphic novels back in the day, and I liked a few of them, but the ones that come to mind first, that would be at the top of my list, would be V for Vendetta and Watchmen by Alan
Oh,
Moore. I think, even though I'm not a comic expert, I'm thinking, there's a comet headed to Earth. There's nothing we can do about it. Human civilization is done. All that's left for us to do is put a few things into a time capsule, blast it out into space, so maybe some aliens can see what we achieved in our short existence and Watchmen might make the time capsule. I'm that high on it.
I
It's maybe this is a sign that I need to return to some comics, some graphic novels.
I have the same edition of Watchmen
Oh, awesome!
that I have of the same. It's right back there. Yeah. I have the same edition of Watchmen. I love Watchmen. I think it's one of the most interesting deconstructions of American comics that has ever been done. American comics up there with jazz, the only one of the only two art forms ever done in this country, born in this country, superhero
Mm,
comics and jazz. Alan Moore deconstructed it. I loved his take on it from the UK looking in, being the outsider looking in. I absolutely had an amazing time. It's always going to be on my all-time faves list.
interesting. Maybe I should read some more comics and then go back to Watchmen. I might be able to appreciate. Well, yep. Read Sandman, read some more comics, and then go back to it with sort of a different eye. Maybe I can appreciate it on even more levels. Very cool. Let us know some of your favorite comics in the comments.
Okay, Sandman, Watchmen. I love Frank Miller's Batman work.
Oh yeah.
If you're talking about Marvel, I love some of the Daredevil stuff. Kevin Smith actually has an excellent run on Daredevil called Guardian Devil. I owned a comic shop for a while, so
Oh, very cool.
comics were like one of my major loves, man. I absolutely adore them.
Oh, awesome. Well, there you
V
John's
for
got the
Vendetta,
answers.
love V for Vendetta.
Oh yeah, V for Vendetta, phenomenal. If you got some questions on comics, yeah, go to Talking Story. John owned his own store, so he's probably got the answer for you.
Back in the day.
Yeah. Me, not so much. Sci-fi. That's my game. So for my third and final recommendation for a chunky books, we've gone chunky, chunkier. It's now time for chunkiest. And for that I have picked Pandora's Star
Oh,
by Peter F.
Hamilton.
Hamilton. And you're looking at it and you're like, it looks pretty big. The paper that they use, it's that paper that's so thin that it's almost see-through. To give you a comparison, here is it's a duology, so there's two books. Look how much thicker, look how much
Wow.
thicker the second one is, and it's only 10 pages longer. It's just that this one has a regular page width. Anyway, Pandora's Star, what is it all about? So it is a grandiose space opera. We have a star that all of one day it disappears. And so people on Earth are like, that might not be good. We should maybe put a space mission together in order to go out there and find out what's happening, why did that happen, and what does it mean for us. And it combines kind of hard sci-fi, but it's not too hard. It's more detailed. I actually think this book focuses more on the world building than it does actually the science. And it follows a lot of different plot lines. For the first 300 pages, I was pretty disoriented, but slowly all of the storylines come together. Some things even feel a little bit more fantastical than they do science fiction. And you get to the end of the first book, and I'm going to be honest, guys, it's even chunkier than you think. Because this is really just one story that's cut in half. So you need to commit to 2,000 pages in order to get to the resolutions that you are seeking with all of those storylines. So that's why I would save this for chunkiest. But if you like space opera, you like world building, you like details, you like hearing about things like enzyme bonded concrete, this is the book for you. And it's a book that I think mostly pays off, returns your investment. It's not actually quite one of my all-time favorite series, but it does have one of my all-time favorite chapters. I won't let you know what it is in case you want it to be a bit of a surprise, but the first book has a chapter that could almost sort of stand alone as a short story. One of the most amazing pieces of science fiction I've ever read. I almost guarantee you, I'm 99% confident that you could read book one and be like, this was the chapter. It had that much of an impact on me and stood out that much. It's worth reading for that chapter alone.
I love this challenge. I absolutely love this challenge.
John, do you like space opera as a subgenre?
I do like space opera. I don't know if I've done enough space opera that's kind of like a hard sci-fi like that.
Hmm.
Like I Dune makes my all-time list
Nice.
for space opera. I started The Expanse. I haven't finished it yet. But I'm currently reading Christopher Rocchio's series, The Sun Eater.
Oh yes, any friend of the Empire is a friend of mine. We love
Yeah,
Sun Eater here on the channel.
I have read Empire of Silence and I have read Lesser Devil, and I'll be picking up Howling Dark next month.
Ooh.
So trying to go through it all. I'm loving, absolutely loving it. But that's kind of sci fantasy. I
Yeah,
think
yeah.
I think most of that is sci fantasy. I haven't really done like hard SF in the space opera field. I think I should probably expand my horizons.
This could be a good bridge because I would say I like Sun Eater more than so this is called the Commonwealth Duology, Pandora Star and Judas Unchained. I think it's a good bridge from sort of sci fantasy space opera to hard sci-fi space opera because I think this exists somewhere in the middle. So if you're looking to try something a bit harder, this might be a good. I actually think there's elements in this that fantasy readers might actually connect to.
I'm gonna put it on my wish list tonight. Pandora's Star. It's going on there.
There you go.
And as soon as I read it, Jonathan, I'm hitting you up with my guess of
Yeah.
what chapter
If
rings the bell.
yeah, put it in the comments if you've read it. What chapter am I talking about? Maybe put a little spoiler so John
Oh,
can't cheat.
I'm gonna be trolling.
Yeah. Put a few dots so you have to click that see more button
Yeah,
and
help
tell
a
me what the
brother out.
chapter
Help a
is.
brother out. I'm gonna be trolling all the comments.
Well, there you go. We were, despite the topic being chunky, potentially long-winded books, I feel like we were quite nice and tight getting our recommendations in today.
I feel good about it, man. There's a lot of, between us. There's a lot of reading here.
Yeah.
I mean, someone could really spend some time going through all this.
Yes, even though we only recommended 6 books, a couple of them were parts of series, so we did maybe just give you about 10 or 12,000 pages to read. That might
Easy.
set your TBR back at least a couple of months. And how much do you read roughly, if you don't mind me asking? Is that a polite
No,
thing
no,
to
not at
ask
all.
on BookTube?
Yeah, right. If you can't ask here, Jonathan, where can you ask? I always try and shoot for about 100 pages a day.
Okay,
So, I mean, if I can keep 100 pages a day, I can read a good, depending on the length, between 6 to 8 books a month. Um, and
nice.
it usually takes me, depending on the book, some prose is denser, some print font's very small. So it usually takes me anywhere from like 2 hours, sometimes all the way up to 3.5 if it's like really small print and dense prose. But I usually always try and find the time before I go to sleep to get about 100 pages in.
That's a good goal. I typically read around 4 or 5 books a month, so just a little bit less. That's why I'm a little bit picky with which chonkers to add to the TBR. So we'll see. I think I read 51 sci-fi books last year. Let's see if we can beat it in 2024. Although it this isn't helping.
Yeah,
I'm loving it,
no,
but
no,
this is not helping you hit the reading goals. But don't read for reading goals, guys. Read for enjoyment. This you
absolutely.
will enjoy.
Absolutely. Read for enjoyment. I mean, since joining BookTube, which I've only been doing this for about 9 months now, I think. So nowhere near as long as you have, Jonathan. But I get one great read after another. Talking to other people and getting comments, recommendations, and everything. Like I so rarely get a read that doesn't connect with me. So it's been since
That's
I've
great.
started, I've had the best reads.
Well, I'm glad you've been finding good recommendations. I hope we gave you guys some good recommendations today. Go to the comments, let us know if you've read any of these, which of them you sound interested in picking up, and come back and let us know how you did. And yeah, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, but most importantly, go to the description, find John's channel, Talking Story, and give him a follow, give him a subscribe. He's passionate about books. He's got me fired up for reading.
Yeah, that's why I'm here. I'm here to fire you up, Jonathan.
And that's what BookTube's all about. Well,
Thanks so much for inviting me, my friend.
yeah, thanks for coming. We hope everyone enjoyed the video, and we'll see you later. I forgot my own outro, but it doesn't matter. Too fired up, John. Too fired
Yeah,
up to read, baby.